I have a lot of history here at Union City Church, and Ashes to Rubies. I was here in 2016 when they had their first Ashes to Rubies. So it's a pleasure and a privilege to be up here sharing with you guys tonight. I wasn't feeling well, and I had canceled out, and I don't know. I felt better, and I had an overwhelming sense of wanting to come and be part of this, because Union City Church and Vicky and John have been a big part of my life. And the people that go to Union City Church have been a big part of my life, part of my sobriety. So about me, I'm going to be celebrating a year sober on Sunday. Yeah. And it's not my first time getting a year. It's not my second time getting a year. It's not even my third time getting a year. I've been in and out of recovery for over 30 years. And, I don't say that to feel ashamed. At one time I was. At one time, my past really had a way of getting its grip into me and making me feel like I wasn't worthy. And I really thought about what was going on in my life. And so when I was younger, and I'm not going to get into a big long thing, but I tried to prove to the world I wasn't afraid, because I was always afraid. Like, I grew up afraid. I was picked on, bullied, kicked around, left behind. So without God in my life, because I never had God in my life, I never had Jesus in my life, I didn't even know what that meant, And as far as I was concerned, church was a place where your parents drop you off when they need some time off. Really, that's what they did. And then I'd get in a fight at Sunday school, and they said I couldn't come back, And so I tried to prove to myself and to everybody else that I wasn't afraid, that I would take on anybody. And, and I did a very good job of doing that. I didn't really show fear too much, went to shady places. I wasn't afraid of the steel either. And, that really took me for a wild ride. And, the one thing that I was the most afraid of, was my son becoming like me, and, so for many years, I was always dad that was sick in the hospital. Dad was away, because I have like 17 treatment centers under my belt. And every time I would lose control and couldn't handle it anymore, I'd go into rehab, or I'd go into the psych ward on suicide attempts. And but I was afraid that my son would become like me. And, that was tough, because like for many years, I was like, I'd stay away, because if he got to know me, he might become like me. And I couldn't handle that. And tonight, he's sitting right here. And, he did turn out somewhat. We're a lot alike. And he's in sobriety too. And, I don't regret that or anything like that. It is part of my story. Because when I used last a year ago, I was empty. I was drained. I had no love in my life, because that's what happened to me. Every time I used in relapse, I used, and love was absent from my life. And I just used harder and harder and harder. And then I remember I wasn't talking to any of my family. I wasn't talking to any of my family. Jeremy had stopped talking to me. And one evening, he showed up in my door, and he come in, and we used together. And that devastated me. My worst fear had come true. And but part of me said, you know what? All those years, those people, everybody put me down, for using, at least I got something now I can, come to me for that. And that's when I felt so much shame. And like I said, I hadn't talked to my family, and just out of the blue, my mom asked me to come over for Christmas. And I hadn't talked to her for like 4 years. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of anger towards her. And I decided to go. Hadn't been sleeping for like 5 days, 6 days. And I just went there and fell asleep. And my mom was praying for me, and they're not Christian, and they're not even churchgoers. But my mom has been praying for me, and she's always been praying for me. I think that's why God kept me alive this long, because she had been praying for me, and I woke up and it was very clear that I had to go back to Ottawa and get help, that there was more to life than sitting in a bug-infested room doing dope and then doing dope with my son. That's not what life is about for me. And so I did that, and I showed up in Ottawa. I don't even know how I did it. I managed to not use the money I had for dope. And I got on the bus, packed up what I could, and showed up here in Ottawa. Put in a request to go to Jericho, but they hadn't got back to me. It's my third time in there. And I just showed up and called Detox. They gave me a bed, and I called up the director, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here." He's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here." He goes, "Well, we haven't accepted you yet." And I said, "I don't care. I'm going either coming here, or I'm going to the mission, or I'm going somewhere, because God has drove me to do this." And Jeremy ended up going into sobriety exactly a month after. So I had to leave Jeremy behind with what he was going through, but I had to do that. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going to come of it, but God stepped in. Where I stopped, God took over. That's the only way I can explain it. When I stopped trying to fix all my mess, when I stopped trying to do everything on my own, God stepped in and took over. He took care of me. He took care of Jeremy. And, and now, like probably a few months later, Jeremy moved up here, and now we live together. And, we're living a good life, and, I owe it all to the power of God. And, like you said, surrender. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew I had to do it, and God has blessed me with more than I could ever imagine. I never thought that this was going to happen with Jeremy and I. Jeremy and I prayed about it for a long time, and we weren't even Christians. We just would lay in bed and talk about it and say, yeah, it'd be great if we did this and did that, but never seemed possible because of my addiction. It put a lot of limitations. And today, God has seen to bring us together in a way that only He can. That's about the only way I can explain it. I could never do it the way that God has done it for me. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Vicky, for asking. Like I said, this has been a big part of my life and my sobriety, and I was very excited to introduce Jeremy to it too.